Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to go ahead and just crack the code of this code language that Chad and Lori are using in the most recent bombshell jailhouse telephone call.
We didn't know when we dug in your backyard we were going to find whatever.
Okay, so right off the bat, we can see they're talking about, they're very nervous about what they're going to find in the backyard. Okay, Lori just comes out and says, Lori's not that creative, and I don't think Chad is that intelligent, actually, really. So right off the bat, they're talking about what they're going to find in the backyard. So let's not pretend this is such a difficult code language, okay? And then later, they're going to talk about problems with the soil.
Well, then you should have said, hey, this is a 99% chance that we're going to have trouble with this soil.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's all we were asking.
So they're being super specific. And I'm not even surprised that the FBI, when they listened to this call, that they immediately went and dug up Chad's backyard like the day after.
So he's optimistic about his construction problem or construction
Problems.
not problems, but plan. His
Yeah.
construction plan. The blueprints are still intact.
Yes.
Their timing.
Okay, so here there's a specific reference to the blueprints, and Lori says the blueprints are still intact. Okay, she says the blueprints are still intact, and then she says the timing. So that helps us understand that the timing is like a metaphor. They're using a code language where the timing involved in this construction project, right? The construction project, the timing is a metaphor for whether it's going to be successful or whether they're going to have real problems, right? So let's just keep listening, and let's listening to the emphasis on the timing, like things taking too long. When Lori talks about things taking too long, that's her way of saying this isn't working. We're having problems. Okay, so let's listen.
I asked him what we'd talked about. And he's very optimistic.
It was very optimistic for you, or he's very optimistic it could happen.
Okay, in this part of the video, you can see that Lori almost doesn't trust Chad. Okay, she's trusting Chad to like get the information from Alex after Alex is dead. Okay, so she trusts Chad, and she believes that Chad can talk to dead people. Okay, so Chad is communicating with Alex to get assurances that the construction project, which I think is burying the kids, right? I think that's all they're worried about. They say from the beginning they're worried about problems with the soil, with people finding something in the backyard, right? And so Chad says he feels optimistic, right? Or Chad says Alex is optimistic, but Lori doesn't trust Chad. And she says, you mean you're interpreting him in an optimistic way, or Alex is optimistic, right?
He's very optimistic for both of us.
He doesn't know his own project timeline.
So here we can see that Lori just doesn't fully trust what she's getting either from Alex or from Chad. Okay, I don't even think Lori trusts Alex in the afterlife. I think she still thinks Alex is maybe not to be fully trusted. But basically you can see that she's very concerned about the timeline, okay, and that she really doesn't trust. So let's just continue to listen, and this will become more clear.
He said stick with it. What he projected in that paper he wrote.
House renovations always take longer than they think.
That's the problem.
Okay, so here Chad is trying to assure Lori that he got the message that Alex said, everything's okay, just trust in the plan. What that means is the kids are not going to be found, right? And then Lori just comes back and says, I don't trust you. And she makes it pretty clear. And then Chad, being such a wuss, he starts to kind of fall and say, yeah, that's the problem. So even Chad is not 100%, even though he's trying to interpret, from beyond the grave here.
I've been watching that Extreme Pools,
Uh-huh.
and the people are like 3 months out. Like,
I mean,
when they estimated they'd have it done, and they're like.
So this to me shows that actually between Chad and Lori, Lori is actually the more practical person. And in a weird way, even though Chad pretends to dominate, he's the one that can interpret beyond the grave. He's the one that gets messages from the afterlife. But Lori always comes back with a more practical, common sense leadership. And I think basically Lori is really impressing on Chad that in her opinion, she doesn't really trust what Alex is saying, and she's very worried about the timeline, about things taking too long. And she uses an example of this pool reality show where the project always takes longer than what the contractor said.
But they try to make it sound like it wasn't really that long, but it's always like it's going to take 3 months. And then 3 months after that, they're like, okay, it took 6 months. You couldn't come in your backyard at all. And now it's not summer anymore. Now it's winter and your pool is finally done.
Okay, so then Chad, like a wuss, he's like a jellyfish. He falls down and he lets Lori dominate, and he understands that she's really worried, and he is no longer so confident. So then Chad comes back with his own code language, where he refers to like some friends who maybe had things taking too long with a project, but then he throws in the thing of maybe getting a mobile home and putting a trailer or like a prefab home, right? And I think that's Chad's way of saying, hey, if you're so worried about it, maybe we can put a trailer over this. He's saying this in code language, right? But he uses like a story about his friends so that it's supposedly like not obvious, right? But basically, I think the interpretation here is if you're so worried about it, and then even Chad is losing confidence in what he got from Alex. And he's saying, if you're so worried about it, maybe we can put a trailer to deal with the time issue. So listen to that.
I can remember last summer, Taylor Hill, Mark's friend, parents moved into a trailer, like a camping trailer, in their driveway because they were going to build their house by the end of the year. Guess where they're still at?
Really?
They sold their house to their son. And it's just a weird situation, but you're exactly right. Yeah, it takes forever.
Okay, so there's Chad basically he's kind of like indulging Lori, saying, yeah, you're right. He's kind of falling down on his prophecy and saying, yeah, for that time issue, if you're so worried about the time, we could always introduce the issue of a mobile home. Okay, but then Chad does go back and he tries to reassure Lori that basically Alex is very confident that there won't be a problem. So he does kind of go back to his prophecy, and let's listen to that.
And I kind of just said, I texted him what you just said is, you guys are always a little off.
Right, exactly. We just want a real estimate.
Right.
What do you say?
He just laughed.
So he did not confirm nor deny that fact. That contractors are always later than they think they're gonna be.
He's like, it'll work out, how he is.
But again, Lori just doesn't buy it. She doesn't buy it. She doesn't ultimately trust either Chad or his interpretation from Alex. And she probably, even if she could talk to Alex herself, I don't think she even trusts Alex beyond the grave.
Remind him when you do text him back that at the beginning of this project, he said there was only like a 3% chance that there would be trouble from certain aspects. And then there's like 100% trouble because that's where it all started.
So Chad cannot convince her. Okay. And they're going to introduce a new issue, which is how this problem is blown up. Okay. And I think what that refers to is whether this was just going to be a problem with the Rexburg police or whether this was going to blow up and be an FBI national story, like a national story with FBI support. Because obviously, I think their fear is that if the FBI gets involved and this becomes a national story, if this blows up, and Chad says if it blossoms into a huge, huge story, well, then the FBI is going to get their resources and then they will eventually find the kids. Okay. Because obviously if you get enough police resources, they're eventually going to look in Chad's yard. Right. But I think their hope was that it would just stick with the Rexburg police or just be like Idaho law enforcement, and there wouldn't be enough resources to actually, locate the kids.
So I want to know why that is 100% instead of 3% chance of having a problem.
Okay, so here when Lori says is a 100% problem, what that means is that 100%, they're very concerned because this has become a national story. Okay, I don't think they're talking about the bodies actually being located because the bodies are not located till the next day. So when Lori says this is now a 100% problem, what she's saying is that this has become a national story where they had been trusting that it would just be an Idaho story and just kind of a local story. They didn't anticipate this becoming a national story. So I think that's what they're talking about here.
I think he was somewhat right in that. The other aspect was other people. It was a combination.
I know it was a combination. I'm not saying there were other problems, obviously. It's of the location.
Okay, so here when they're talking about other people and they talk about a combination, I think they're talking about the FBI getting involved more than just Idaho law enforcement. So they're talking about the expansion of the importance of the story and how this has become like a major story. And I think that what's important for them is that now the FBI is getting involved, and that makes them very nervous. And then Lori says, "Go back and listen to what I just played," because she says it mumbles. She mentions something about the location.
Other problems, obviously. It's of the location.
That's like the last thing she says, the location. And so she's very worried about, law enforcement happening on the location.
So find out about that.
Right.
See what he has to say for himself on that issue. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
So that's what Lori's ultimately worried about. She's worried about the location. And as she said, she made it very clear the only thing they're really worried about is problems with the soil. That's what they're really worried about. And that's what she's really concerned about, whether they're going to find the location.
I've thought back on that entire scenario.
We went over the plan and the blueprint.
I don't doubt that. It's just strange how it blossomed.
Right.
So here, Chad is saying that he's thought very carefully, and this is the incriminating part. Chad is admitting that he's thought very, very carefully about the logistics of burying the kids. Okay. And now he's starting to say, well, I don't really doubt, like he's trying to say he doesn't doubt that he trusts Alex. All right. But then at the same time, Chad's admitting that this problem has blossomed. This problem has blossomed. I don't think it's very hard to interpret this. I think what's happening is that they are noticing that this has become a national story. Okay. It's blossomed into a national story. I don't think they anticipated on that. I think they expected this just to kind of stay kind of a local story. And now they're scared. I think they are scared because now they know the FBI is getting involved.
You think it was meant to have complications and meant to go that direction?
At some point, yeah.
Okay, so I think here Chad is admitting that it was inevitable that this would become a national story. And I think he's also kind of admitting they didn't really anticipate that it would become a national story. I think this is the part that they kind of messed up on in their prophecies. They didn't expect this to blow up into an FBI, like a national story, and now an FBI thing. But I think if we really look at, I think look at this code language, it's not really that hard to interpret. They're really just very concerned about problems in the soil and what's going to be found in the backyard.
Well, then you should have said, hey, this is a 99% chance that we're going to have trouble with this soil. We didn't know when we dug in your backyard, we were going to find whatever.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's all we were asking.
And I think that's pretty much the key to interpreting this. And I think this thing about the 100% problem, I think they're really worried this is blown up into a national problem. So that's pretty much my analysis, and thanks for watching.